This week in gaming history. This week in 1985 saw the release of Gauntlet, the fantasy-themed hack-and-slash arcade game, developed by Atari Games and designed by Ed Logg. It was basically the first multiplayer dungeon crawl arcade game. You had 4 different characters which you could choose from: the warrior, the wizard, the Valkyrie, or the elf. Each character has his or her own unique strengths and weaknesses. The warrior's got strong hand-to-hand, the wizard's got magic and stuff like that, elf is really fast and that sort of thing. It gave birth to a whole series of Gauntlet games released on pretty much every system that has ever been released, and also a lot of clone games. I remember a game called Ninja Massacre on the ZX Spectrum, which was the same game but with ninjas instead of elves and the like. So yes, on this week in 1985, the release of Gauntlet into the arcades. Also this week in 1986 saw the release of Genpei Tomoden by Namco. It was developed by Namco and published also by Namco, and it came out on the arcades in Japan on October the 1st, 1986, and it was only ever released in Japan, and it's only ever been released in Japan. The arcade game in 86 was then ported to the X6 8000 in 88, the Famicom, the PC Engine, the mobile phone, and even the Wii Virtual Console, but only in Japan. We have never seen a Western translation of the game. It's basically a side-scrolling beat-em-up with it's quite Japanese art, Japanese painting artwork, and there's 3 types of action. There's small mode, big mode and plain mode. The small mode is just basically standard mode. The big mode is the same but with bigger characters and massive boss fights, and plain mode which is overhead. So there's lots to be going through. So yes, released October the 1st, 1986 on the arcades as Genpei Tomoden. Just 1 year later, this week in 1987, and this game definitely got a Western release, as it's a Western game, and that is Maniac Mansion by Lucasfilm Games, directed by Ron Gilbert, designed by Ron Gilbert and Gary Winnick, and it is an absolute classic. It was released on pretty much every platform: C64, the Apple II, the IBM PC, Amiga, Atari ST, the NES, pretty much everything you could shake a stick at. It was indeed the Commodore 64/Apple II version, which was released this week in 1987, October the 5th to be exact, and it's basically one of the first of the famous SCUM engine graphic adventure games, which is basically point and click, but great. It was basically the comedic element of Maniac Mansion is where it really stands out. There's been a sequel, which of course was Day of the Tentacle, and lots of other SCUM engine games, basically like Monkey Island and that sort of game. And yeah, it's well worth your time, and you can download it, and I'm sure it's on the Virtual Console probably now. So go out and get it. Yes, released this week in 1987, that's Maniac Mansion. Hopping forward to 1989 and the release of Prince of Persia on the Apple II. Again, another classic game developed by Broderbund, who last week you may remember were the developers of Myst. Broderbund have released many great games. It was designed by Jordan Mechner, and this basically October the 3rd, 1989 saw the North American release on the Apple II of Prince of Persia. If you've never played Prince of Persia, it's a fantasy platformer. and you're basically the titular Prince of Persia as you go through a series of dungeons to defeat the Grand Vizier Jafar. So it's a little bit like Aladdin sort of thing, and used like rotoscoping effects to make it more realistic and fluid animation, and it really works. It was quite a sight to behold when it was first released in '89, and of course it went on to follow such games such as Another World, Prince, and the rest of the Prince of Persia games like Sands of Time, Shadow of Flame, and even the Prince of Persia movie, which came out in 2008, I believe, around then. So yes, on this week in 1989, the release of Prince of Persia on the Apple II.
もう高橋はハンディゲーム機はカラーじゃないと楽しくないと宣言します。
パズルゲームぷよぷよもぷよっと大人気
というわけでいつでもどこでもカラーが楽しいゲームギア。
Let's hop forward now to October 6th, 1990 to see the Japanese release of the almighty Sega Game Gear. It was basically competed with the Nintendo Game Boy, the Atari Lynx, and the Turbo Express as well. Went on to sell around about 10 million units by the end of March 1996, which isn't a hell of a lot. The reception at the time was a little bit mixed. The full colour backlit screen was praised, and it was pretty powerful for a handheld system at the time, a lot more powerful than the Game Boy, but its battery life was pretty awful. And so if you were taking it on the move, you only had a couple of hours on it before all your batteries were dead. It went on to be released in Europe in 91, Australia in 92, North America in 91, and it did have some absolutely cracking games such as the Sonic games. There was a load of Sonic games for the Game Gear, lots more than was ever on the Mega Drive or the Master System. Racing games, you name it, it pretty much had it on the Game Gear. But if you're after a nice bit of nostalgia, you could do much worse than buying a Sega Game Gear. Released on this day in Japan, October 6th, 1990. October the 8th, 1992 saw the original release of Mortal Kombat into the arcades. Developed by Midway Games and designed by the gruesome twosome of Ed Boon and John Tobias, everybody knows Mortal Kombat with its digitized graphics and terrible violence and gore. Every 12-year-old child, which I was at the time, wanted to play Mortal Kombat. It was ported to pretty much everything at the time: the SNES, the Mega Drive, Game Boy, Game Gear. I think even the Master System got a version of Mortal Kombat. You had quite a few characters to choose from: Johnny Cage, Kano, Raiden, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Liu Kang, and Sonya Blade were the original characters that you could choose. And yeah, it was a massive hit. Of course, the Mega Drive version had all the blood, the SNES version didn't, which had many Mega Drive owners at the time. They're going, oh yeah, you got Street Fighter 2, but you got Mortal Kombat with blood in it. Yeah, Dad. Yeah. And yeah, there you go. Mortal Kombat released this week in 1990. Yes, although there are other big games which were released this week, including Grand Theft Auto and Time Crisis 2, our last game is going to be a Dreamcast game, released this week in the year 2000 on the Dreamcast in Japan, October the 5th to be exact, is Skies of Arcadia. It was actually released in Japan as Eternal Arcadia, which is basically a role-playing game developed by Overworks and directed by Atsushi Maya and Shuntaro Tanaka. It was also ported to the GameCube in 2002. You are Vice, a young air pirate it's a bit like Jules Verne. That's pretty much the inspiration for the world that they're living in. And his group of friends as he attempts to stop the Valuan Empire from reviving ancient weapons with the potential to destroy the world. If you have never played Skies of Arcadia, then it is well worth your time. If you've got a Dreamcast, that is, or a GameCube. But yes, if you can find it, then well worth your time. It's a very, very good game indeed. And that is the last game for this week, released by Sega in the year 2000, a whole 16 years ago, can you believe it, in Japan, Skies of Arcadia. Thank you for tuning in to another on This Week in Gaming History. Hope to see you next week for more retrospective fun and frolics. I'm Richard Higton for Thumb Culture, and goodbye, good luck, and good riddance.